Picture it. Romeo arriving to Juliet below her windows. He has already texted her 3 times to let her know he was getting on his horse, another to say he had to stop to feed and water the horse, and then finally to tell her he arrived below her windows. Meanwhile, she lay on her bed, clutching her phone, refreshing messages to ensure only a millisecond passed between his texts and her responses. She breathlessly opens her French doors and looks down to the ground to see her paramour, his face aglow from looking at his screen, and she wonders who else could he be texting. She calls out to him, "Romeo!" He pulls out his earbuds and lifts his head. He waves, smiles, then looks down at his phone and reads eloquent prose about love and life and their future together. She cries and says, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, you never told me you can write such beautiful prose." And he responds, "My fair Juliet, I cannot. I ChatGPT'd that." Welcome to We Are the Machines. I'm Dr. Deitra Sawh. This podcast is for those who want to use artificial intelligence. Through anecdotes and phrases, you will be fluent in AI in front of the executive team and at the dinner party. I explain how machines learn in the context of human learning and arm you with the right questions to be asking the machines or those who are building your business machines. You will sound like an AI rock star by the end of each episode. Let's get started. Our stories of love have been narrated through literature, enthralling us over time and cultures. These evocative phrases have inspired creativity and deep human feelings to stir one to tears. Such is the power of the narrator. But now that the narrator is a compendium of all the words ever recorded on the internet, the prose is superfluous, disingenuous, but somehow accomplishes the same thing. This is because words, phrases, and messages have been commoditized. And just as the raspberries in the grocery store are not as sweet as those from the garden, so are our words generated by AI. And that is why writing is now automated. No one has to sit down and work out anything by hand anymore. We type a request to write an email for us as quickly as we pick up a calculator. No one has to remember anything anymore because we can look it up. When the internet became accessible to everyone, it took our memory. And now AI is taking our ability to cognate, mostly because we are not doing cognitive work ourselves. The machine is doing it for us. So just as we are dependent on the machine to remember things for us, so we will be dependent on the machine to think for us as well. What does this mean for our businesses? At the leadership level, it's hard to trust the products of new staff. I question their sources and have to take extra time to quiz staff to check if the individual has any comprehension of the product. We mentioned in our episode on AI harnessing that knowledge is no longer valued. But when I want staff to actually do the cognitive work, I expect them to have some background or intuition around the topic. And that is where the business world is suffering. Staff cannot link together disparate events. For example, seeing something happen in Asian capital markets and translate that impact to the North American market open. The other business impact is costing. Several industries charge for writing type services, copywriters, consulting, and now are challenged to alter their business model because what took someone 5 hours before only takes 5 minutes. AI's analysis surpasses the consulting firms' humans in both breadth and presentation, so much so that AI has become our individual bespoke consultancy. Coincidentally, AI has a disposition similar to that of consultants. Consultants aren't going to tell you something you don't want to hear, and neither will the machines. That's because AI, by construction, is a sycophant, a servile, self-seeking flatterer. The models are trained to agree with you, and businesses are using AI to prove a postulate instead of for creativity, innovating, and challenging. AI is accelerating mediocrity by cycling through the same phrases and words, obfuscating points with many words, and misquoting. But in a multi-input world where business moves at the speed of light, the same thing keeps popping up. AI is faster. From idea to code shipping, it can speed up the process, and analysis can be quickly turned over. But how do we know if it's right? Okay, time for a question. What is your best tool for remembering? When you studied for an exam before AI, you wrote pages and pages of notes by hand. My engineering peers and I even got to write cheat sheets, which we never used during the exam, but the simple act of writing it was enough of a study tool. That's because we need to write to remember. It is an act of cognition. So what happens when we stop writing? Well, we've already seen students arriving at university with poor reading and writing skills. And there is not incentive for those students to improve those skills when AI is at their fingertips. Sometimes I choose to write the email instead of AI because I need to think it through. This cognitive processing is now transferred to building, or sometimes battling, with the prompts to think through problems, because ultimately, the quality of your question or prompt determines the entire output. A few tactics to assess automating writing for yourself and others can include falsification tests. Take whatever material has been given to you and ask the LLM to prove it wrong or poke holes in it. When working with AI, decide for yourself how much thought you want to give to the problem. Because if you don't think about something, you don't know it. And while knowledge is not as valued, the thinking involved is useful for things humans are good at: relating, building trust, and intuition. And now, a moment for the human. Our daily communication of emotions was initially disrupted by technology through being distilled into emojis and acronyms. But how can one compare the sweet harmony of a lover's thoughtful phrase to a digitized red heart? Perhaps this language is sufficient for the isolated human with a heart trained online. When the system of communication is a code interpretable by a machine, it becomes a tool for the heart's repression too. Thank you for listening to We Are the Machines. I'm Dr. Deitra Sawh.